Okay, hi everybody. Good R Shabbos. Good happy kodesh Shvat. I'm gonna read a lesson for the week from R Sholom's book Exodus on the Parshat Bo. It's on page 137 if you want to join along if you have the sefer. And I'm just gonna jump in. It's a beautiful lesson, worthwhile to take it in. It should be Le'ilui Nishmato Shel Rav Amatok. The kadosh shelanu, R Sholom Ben Yosef Ikutio Zusha Zichrono Libracha. Okay, practical lessons and applications for the 10 makot, for the plagues. The freedom of choice to change. The following teaching from the Beis Yaakov, the son of the Ishbitzer Rebbe, is about self-improvement and the freedom of choice to do so. Paro represents the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, and Moshe Rabbeinu represents the Yetzer HaTov, the good inclination. Hashem sends Moshe to inform Paro that he has been deluding himself and on an evil path and needs to change. During the Seder, it's customary to spill a drop of wine from our cups as each of the 10 plagues is mentioned. Following this, we read a passage from the Haggadah. Rabbi Yehuda set for them the makot acronyms, Detzach, Adash, and Bachav. Rabbi Yehuda groups the 10 makot into 3 sets, titled by the first letter of the Hebrew names of the makot. The Beis Yaakov shares insights as to how Rabbi Yehuda's sets correlate to the way the different makot were presented to Paro. They are largely based on 3 different ways Hashem directed Moshe to present the makot. There's this nice chart here. If you have the book, you can look along. He's going to describe it in the words anyway. In this chart, each of the sets contains 3 makot that were presented to Paro in 3 different ways. The first makah of each set was preceded with a warning, specifically given in the morning, when Paro was at the Nile. The second makah in each set was also preceded by a warning, but since Hashem didn't specify when the warning was to be given, we can assume it was given during the daytime, in Paro's palace. The third makah in each set was not preceded by any warning at all. What's more, all the makot in the third set afflicted the Egyptians' physical beings, while the makot in the other sets only afflicted their land and possessions. Due to this inherent pattern, Rabbi Yehuda, the Tana, grouped the makot into these 3 specific sets. The Beis Yaakov sees a deep lesson in this pattern. Paro, the Yetzer Hara, had big debates with Moshe, the Yetzer Tov. Paro claimed that he himself was the most important person in the eyes of the Creator, even more important than the children of Israel. He was sure that by enslaving the children of Israel, he was actually doing the will of the Creator. Understand that all the early kings of nations were exceedingly wise and acted from a place of deep sagacity. However, this bred a sense of self-aggrandizement with some kings, such as Paro. Paro was, in a sense, a prisoner of his own mindset. He had convinced himself of his great worth to the point that he curtailed his ability to change. This is similar to how most of us convince ourselves that whatever we're doing is correct and worthwhile because it's what we're doing. It's important to understand how human nature works in regards to change. The degree to which we have free choice shifts according to the time of day. Hashem sent Moshe to warn Paro early in the morning, because this is the time of day when we have the most freedom of choice. Stubbornness doesn't have as much of a chance to sink in when one rises bright and early. Since Hashem returns our neshamas to us when we wake, the morning affords a special closeness to the one who bestows us with consciousness. The freshness of the morning makes it less likely for one to be overly attached to personal interests and self-gratification. The morning warnings were also coupled with the detail that he, Paro, was going out to the water, which is the act that signifies a desire to settle one's mind. On one level, going out to the water is like going to the mikveh. It was like Paro's attempt to beautify and purify himself of all personal motivation in having enslaved the children of Israel. Thus Hashem told Moshe to go to Paro at that time so that there would be more of a chance that Paro might heed the warning. The pure morning state would allow Paro to determine whether he truly had no personal interest in enslaving and inflicting great suffering upon the children of Israel. When Paro did not heed the warning in the first set of makot, he became more stubborn, stiff-necked, and attached to his concept of self and role in the world. Thus the phrase, early in the morning, behold, he's going out to the water, is not mentioned at all in the warning preceding the second makah of each set. By that time, Paro had become more stubborn and attached to his personal interests. Still, he retains some measure of free choice. Therefore, Hashem tells Moshe, come to Paro, to warn him. However, the warning for the second makah in each set came during the busyness of the day, a less opportune time for change. Once Paro failed to heed the warning of the second in each of the set of the Makot, his stubbornness and anger consumed him. Even though it was clear that his behavior was not in accordance with Hashem's will, he still refused to listen to him. Therefore, Hashem did not send Moshe to warn him at all before the third Makkah of each set. In the warning that precedes the Makkah of hail, which is the seventh Makkah and the first Makkah of the last set, Hashem directs Moshe to rise early in the morning and stand before Paro. Yet Hashem does not say, "Behold, he's going out to the water." This is because earlier, once the sixth Makkah boils hit, Hashem hardened Paro's heart. Paro's free choice was significantly curtailed. Going out to the water signifies the freedom of choice to behave according to the will of the Creator. But at this point, Paro no longer had the ability to present himself as a free agent who was simply doing God's will. Each one of us, with the exception of tzaddikim, has to deal with the conflict between our Yetzer Hara and our Yetzer Tov, between the godly soul and our animal soul. The Alter Rebbe taught that even though the vast majority of us may not be able to attain the level of tzaddik, we can all attain the level of Benoni, which is the intermediate level between righteousness and wickedness. The tzaddik fully conquers the Yetzer Hara and doesn't even have to deal with it. The Benoni, however, constantly struggles against his Yetzer Hara, but manages to never give into it. Any person can rise to the status of Benoni, even if it's just for a fleeting moment. Everyone knows the Yetzer Hara is exceedingly clever and deceptive. We can be fooled into thinking, like Paro, that we're very holy, even when we're quite corrupt. Indeed, we can even act as if we're holy and pretend we're doing God's will, while we actively cause harm and suffering to others. Fortunately, Hashem sends Moshe Rabbeinu, the Yetzer HaTov, to inform us that we're not acting in accordance with Hashem's will. We're given the impetus to change. Change is not an easy matter. There are times when it's easier, times it's more challenging, and times it's exceedingly difficult. Hopefully, it will never be impossible, even if it feels so. The time of day that we have the greatest measure of free choice is early in the morning, when our neshama has just been returned from the world of truth. If we pay attention, we'll learn how to hear our neshamot telling us what we must do, where we're off, and how we must change. If we're receptive to the power of the morning, we can follow our Yetzer Tov and abandon our egocentric interests. If we do not listen or make efforts to change, we become more stubborn as the day progresses. Hashem will call to us again later in the day. At such a point, we will still have the free choice to change, even though it may become more difficult to do so. But if we fail to heed the second warning, our anger and stubbornness will have a firmer clench on us. We will most likely continue to do wrong things, even though we know they're wrong. This is true not only for times of the day, but for circumstances we get ourselves into as well. We often fall into situations that are negative or simply not what our soul needs us to be focused on. Our Yetzer Tov usually gets a sense of this and warns us to steer clear of the situation at an early morning stage when our neshamot are still untainted by the situation. If we neglect this warning, we will have at least one other sign that we're off track. However, since the second or third warning comes when we're more involved in the situation, it's much harder, still not impossible, to pull ourselves out of circumstances we feel so attached to. Unfortunately, if we ignore these warnings, our Yetzer Tov will weaken and our stubborn anger may keep us stuck in the situation. We should therefore be careful to always listen to our Yetzer Tov early on and keep our pure instincts intact. So that's a lesson. Found it really beautiful. Yikaber ka'ari la'amod b'boker. We should get up early, always, and make the most of the chances that we're being given. Good Shabbos to everybody, and good Shabbos to R Sholom, the whole family, the whole chevre. Good news. L'chaim.